So, Disclosure Day is the latest film from Steven Spielberg, and it involves aliens, which is not something new for Steven Spielberg. You know, he's done Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. and War of the Worlds. So, where does Disclosure Day sit among all these alien movies? Well, not quite at the top, but I mean, like, that's, Spielberg has done some top tier alien movies, so it's kind of like a high bar to meet here. Steven Spielberg has directed some of the most hopeful and profound science fiction, some of which were about aliens that want to talk rather than conquer or eat us. In some cases. And Disclosure Day is very much that type of Spielberg film, placing it among the ranks of Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., and even though this latest entry doesn't quite match the same level of comfy charisma in the other movies, its big ideas are admirable for what it is, for what is essentially a conspiracy theory that leans more towards the towards a humanistic and heartfelt revelation. So the unexplained becomes a rousing element in Spielberg's story, screenwritten by David Coep, that we get the thrill of being dropped right into this intricate plot. Like, we don't know too much. Like, we don't know that much about Daniel Kellner, played by Josh O'Connor, other than that he's being targeted by a group of dangerous men in suits led by the cruel Noah Scanlon, played by Colin Firth. We don't know why Kansas City weather reporter Margaret Fairchild, played by Emily Blunt, starts speaking Russian, just out of the blue, but it does have something to do with a bird that she saw. We don't know why the lying low Hugo Wakefield, played by Coleman Domingo, is building what looks like a house, but it must be important considering all the crucial phone calls that he's making in between construction. And all of it amounts to a well-kept secret of aliens that could mean the difference between the world obliterating itself in World War III or evolving as a species. The movie has the behavior of somebody with a secret that they're trying not to spill, but they can't help themselves. And they just want to spill everything out immediately. Because if the first act was a progressive drip of the mysterious, the second act, it spells out the complexities in a digestible way that no audience can misinterpret. Take, for example, Daniel's girlfriend, Jane, played by Eve Hewson, who serves her purpose as a former nun questioning her spirituality amid the revelation of aliens coming from the stars. Her paranoia is perfectly preyed upon by someone as manipulative as Noah, but her faith can be easily restored with the sage words of Sister Maura, played by Elizabeth Marvel. Thematically, Jane is an essential character, but feels more like a vessel for how she hits the ground running in this story. The same can be said for Margaret's boyfriend of Jackson, played by Wyatt Russell, serving up only a mild dose of comic relief to the strange happenings all around him. And at the core of the picture is a need for empathy, perfectly conveyed through Margaret's newfound ability to speak every language and basically peer into everybody's mind. Armed with such amazing talent, she effortlessly drops into conversations of unresolved family matters and breakdowns in communication. And this is an incredible discovery, but one that Margaret can't take much wonderment in exploring, what with a nasty cybersecurity agency pursuing her with a handful of exciting car chases. And she learns while running how to effortlessly break down any human that she encounters into more of an individual than an asset, because at one point, she essentially just speedruns her psychic therapy technique to make her way through an entire security force. Like, she doesn't attack them. She just says, like, oh, I can peer into your soul. It's like, oh, you're worried about this connection? Let me reassure you. Or let me take the image of someone you love and just, like, break them down and make these people realize the humanity in their soul rather than just serving a cybersecurity firm. So this is a movie that tries to do so much that it ends up stumbling and reducing itself to get all its grand ambitions onto the screen in under 3 hours. But thankfully, even amid the over-explaining in the second act, there are some genuinely touching moments where the characters are given room to breathe amid the many expositional dumps. The connections that Margaret and Daniel form when they finally meet is rather sweet for how they literally have their own language and can understand each other's plight. Margaret spends the bulk of the movie so uncertain and frantic about her powers that that's very comforting to see Daniel calm her amid a panic attack, which is always a good sign. I always like when there's a character who has a panic attack and there's someone there to properly handle it instead of just like, like smack them around and saying like snap out of it. Like there's actually genuine understanding there between these two characters. Now, of course, it helps to have a mesmerizing score by John Williams and some unique special effects involving alien communication devices and invisibility. So there's a little bit of that alien wonderment the more that you get through the story. It shouldn't surprise anybody that by the third act, Spielberg delivers on his promise of aliens, but he builds up enough humanity so that when the truth comes out, it means so much more than some, instead of feeling like a handful of very astute X-File episodes. And there's a tightrope walk of wonder and philosophy and how Spielberg crafts a movie that can be as contemplative as it is thrilling. An earnest appeal to human connection does go down a little smoother when characters are narrowly avoiding being hit by trains. So there are some pretty neat action sequences, even though they don't really turn up all that much until like the second act. Now, part of me wanted to see more of that lived-in quality with the characters, because that's very much a Spielberg hallmark. Like, with like movies like Close Encounters and E.T., we got to hang out with these characters and their community, and it felt very relatable, very, very real. We don't get as much of that charisma because the ideas get the front seat this time, and while that is a tad disheartening, it also makes the conversation more direct than aloof. The narrative is still careful about keeping the anxiety of World War III in the background rather than delving into the specifics, because that's not really the point of the story. The focus on communication, particularly in the final act when it pretty much turns into a broadcast news drama at that point. But just the entire focus on communication is never lost in a film that begs us to listen to each other without coming off very hokey and preachy. It does feel like there are a few moments where it kind of gets into that territory, but it thankfully becomes more empathetic rather than just, preachy. That was my biggest concern. And it thankfully isn't with Spielberg's story given a little extra oomph by David Koepp and Spielberg's, exciting direction as well. So Disclosure Day may not be Spielberg's best alien movie, but it does offer the most humanity and thought amid its conspiracy theory thrills. And despite the many times that the film has to slow down and spell out the connections, the unmistakable appeal of connecting with each other before we connect with the cosmos does make for an intriguing film. And it might be lacking in a few Spielberg hallmarks here and there, but it also doesn't trip down the steep stairs of sanctimoniousness in its universal messaging. What it holds in the highest regard might be the hope that there's something better over the horizon, even amid all the turmoil. And that might be a hard sight to behold in our current world right now, but Spielberg's film makes that desire for peace not only seem tantalizing, but also within our grasp. And we could all use a sentimental balm of a movie like this that is one that combats the mindlessness and the meanness of our world and our media. And I kind of went back and forth on this film because on the one hand, the characters kind of like spell out a lot of the themes directly, and I wish there was a little bit more time spent with the characters before they have to dump all this on the audience. But at the same time, I think, for general audiences who come to this film, there's no way to misread that message of hope and empathy. And I think Spielberg does a great job communicating that through an intriguing alien conspiracy, which I think works out really well. I think it was very charming to see an alien conspiracy movie where there's not like dread and dissection and, like vicious aliens wanting to eat us in the next scene. Like there's actually a desire to understand and better our world and just be more honest and be more open with each other. And I think that's a wonderful message to have. But like I say, a movie with a good message has to be a good movie first. And I think for the most part, even with the stumbling here and there, I still think this is a pretty good Spielberg film. So yeah, it's not on the same level as E.T. and Close Encounters, but for having a very, very hopeful and humanistic approach. I think Disclosure Day is a pretty damn good film.